Hey, welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney and Fricke. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Let's give the people what they want. Here is part 2 of the due on sale call breakdown, right? So not only will you be completely lost, but you will miss a ton of gems if you not listen to part 1. So make sure whatever you do, I wouldn't encourage going too much further into this podcast if you haven't listened to part 1, which was the last episode, okay? So make sure you do that. Guys, stay all the way until the end because Steve actually gave me some very important footage so that I could actually, information so I can include it in the footage at the end. So there's gems all along the way. All right, now let's get back. I don't want to hold you guys any longer. That I know that this breakdown, it's helped a lot of us with a lot of information. So appreciate you guys tuning in, listening, and sharing what your thoughts are on this entire breakdown. Now let's get back to the meat and potatoes.
And the wholesaler for sure too. And the question is, would the wholesaler give their assignment feedback? I mean, I definitely would. But some other...
Most of them would be like, no, it already spent it on that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. If that happened, I'd be giving that back in a second because you don't deserve an assignment fee. They're already in damage with a payback. But that assignment fee should disappear.
Well, you're a long-term thinker. Most people are short-term thinkers, and they would have been like, no, I did my part. What did someone say who hurt someone recently? There's this guy who hurt someone. He said, well, all investments are risky. You should have known the risk you were getting into. Again, short-sighted thinking.
Yeah. And I will say one thing. I have wholesale subject to twice. But when I did,
You stepped out of the way.
One of them actually, we did a new contract with the buyer. So the buyer and the seller actually contracted together. We got paid on the side. There was transparency. And another one, there was transparency. Like it was a really good buyer. They everyone knew what was going on.
But this is what I say for wholesalers is you're immediately entering risk into your business for the life of that transaction. Because what if this didn't happen immediately, although it makes it worse that it happened immediately, but what if this happened 6 months, 6 years down the road, right? And so for the life that this loan is still out there, there's some risk. If this happened 6 years down the road, they figure this out, and they call it due, would you be giving your wholesale feedback? You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those things, right? You're like, man, we're so far removed, man. I got, but that's what I mean by the risk brought in. So let's actually dive back. I appreciate you bringing those things up because Lord, let this not be a conversation about wholesaling subject to deals. That's another conversation. So let's break down the rest of the deal. So a lot of you guys know I put out on my social media, hey guys, I'm interviewing someone who just had a loan immediately called due. And I said, hey, what are your questions? You guys came in like the wildebeest that you are with so many questions. So, all right, so this is questions around the loan type. Was it a conventional loan? So a lot of people were asking, was it a Fannie Mae loan sold on the secondary market or a local community bank that portfolioed it and serviced themselves? Was it a current loan or in foreclosure and already on their radar? Also loan type VA, FHA, conventional. So let's kind of talk about that. So this was, the type of loan that this was specifically, again, tied to a housing, like a local community initiative where a regional bank was doing a community program to help people who were renters to get into housing. And so a big part to that is that's important because although it wasn't a small bank like a 3-branch type of bank, it was a larger one, but this was a deeply local community project. I don't know if they have this for every city. You know what I mean? That they work in. This might have just been, hey.
Even in our city, I don't think they do it now.
It might have been just for a period of time that they were doing it. And so I do not believe it was sold on the secondary market as a normal loan product. Yes, it was originally serviced by First NBC, but again, that bank went under. And it wasn't like a 2008 went under like this big local thing. And so it's not surprising that Hancock came and bought a lot of their assets. But again, I don't think it was designed to be, they do the loan and they package it up and sell it. Yeah. So although it was sold, again, that was a unique situation. Yes, they service themselves. It's a Hancock Whitney loan, and it's a Hancock Whitney is servicing the payment. Was it current or in foreclosure? So they were behind, but they were not. They had not had a date set.
Yeah, the
but they had
pre-foreclosure,
hired an attorney.
They had the attorney letters, they had the payment, they had the threat, but there was
It
no
was
date.
coming soon. I'm not gonna lie. I'm curious if they were slow rolling it because it's not a good look for them to foreclose on this type of.
It was really slow because I was surprised too because I
That
wanted-
far along into the
because
foreclosure
we waited
process.
like 6 because I didn't really want to close it in the house just for simplicity. So the deal was like she needed like 6 weeks to get out.
Okay.
I'm
So like packing, finding somewhere to go.
I'm
Yeah.
like that's fine unless you're getting. So we were watching for an auction notification
Because they had already hired the attorney, so that boom, $5,000, that's due now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like that's a part of the thing. But it wasn't like, hey, you haven't gotten served yet.
Yeah.
That's going to make a big spike. And so then you're watching that, like, hey, is it getting like a date set? So it was on their radar. Okay. Was there a recent loan modification?
No.
No.
She's had it since 2011.
Yep.
2013. Sorry.
Yep.
A long time.
And was no partial claim FHA like HUD second lien. There was the second.
There was, yeah. She had like a down payment assistance.
Correct, which was a part of the program. So I read that it was 2 notes tied in for a mortgage. It was a closing cost and a down payment assistance that basically. So we haven't deep dived this part. So I looked at the abstract. It is they had. All right, so the 30-year abstract, they had, and again, this is like, okay, Hancock Whitney serviced the loan, but what it was is the city of New Orleans in the grant, what they did was they went ahead and basically provided down payment. I'm sure it was like 0%, no money out of pocket type of thing, 0% down, and hold on, I actually have her HUD. Cash from borrower, she brought $703 to the table when she originally purchased it. But it was a down payment assistance and a closing cost assistance, which was like, ended up being like close to $20,000 that the city of New Orleans in a grant had that. And what they did is they put it as a second, that was a sleeping second, no payments due. But if the penalty was if you sold it. So here's one of the things when I was reading those is that it had a 10-year period.
Yes.
That if you sold before the 10 years was up, basically we'll give you this grant, but you got to stay here.
Yeah.
And if you sell early, you have to pay it back. But if you don't, it's forgiven. Well, the prescription period was 10 years. 10 years was in 2023, right? This 2013 loan when she purchased it. And so then in order to, so literally the title company has as a prescription, basically this was basically a second that was no longer valid because they had gone past their 10-year period. And so I think that's something that is, important, to bring up, talk about. And so now, at the end of the day, let's see. Okay, I'm looking at the 30-year abstract. She had 2 repos, so she had some financial issues in 2017 and 2018. The 2 loans, the first mortgage and the second, and then you know what? That Hancock Whitney got that from First NBC just in 2024.
Oh wow. Okay. So recently.
Yeah, but there was a lot of zombie mortgages with First NBC. So anyway, so not surprised about that. Okay, so looking at the title abstract, it's not like she had a lot of crazy things. Okay. All right. The bank was the bank. Name and location again. Hancock Whitney. That's a pretty regional bank. Pretty large too. Again, Whitney. Hancock Whitney bought out. Hancock bought a lot of the Whitneys. They changed their name to Hancock Whitney, merged, and bought a lot of them. I think both Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe even another state. Has the new owner buyer spoken to the lender since being notified? We talked about that. You actually went in person. You had, obviously, you were not hiding the fact of what you did. You were not like, I'm the property manager. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you did it. We talked about how the lender learned about the sale. We talked about it. The seller contacted basically the housing authority that was sending her a payment. She went to go and rectify that, to stop that, and then they were like, wait, send us. And look, if she would have sold it free and clear, sold it outright, like no subject to, they would have still asked for her documents.
Yeah.
Because they would have needed that for their records to show that, and so them asking for it, but then once they get it, they're like, oh wait, this isn't a cash deed, this isn't,
Yeah. I think they were concerned too, like what did they didn't understand, confused mind. They're like,
They said no. Yep.
Is this a scam?
Exactly.
Which is fair for them to ask.
Sure. Obviously, they this is not something they see often. Okay, so did the property be put into a trust?
No.
And you said just a normal LLC.
Yep.
And someone said, did they just change the name back? Again, we talked about that. I don't believe that would have solved the issue. I think that would have just been costly for recording fees and document prep fees. Did changing the insurance into a third-party name cause a due on sale clause? A lot of people, they believe like the entity or insurance is one of those things. Again, number one, with it like putting into a trust, I think that is a not a foolproof, way of saying like, oh, they'll never call the loan due type of thing. And I had some final questions. Hold on. Jeff Watson, an attorney, had some things. He goes, let me read some of the other ones. What was immediately, had you made your first payment? You tried, but they rejected it at that point.
Well, I mean, they'd already called it
it was flagged within days.
It was super fast. I did make it just because I just wanted to keep it current as well, but they rejected it.
And he goes, was there a signed authorization to release information? That plus a limited power of attorney. So that even trumps a third-party authorization. Again, you were trying to submit that, and they basically, they were like, no, this has been flagged. Someone says, was this investor someone who learned from a competent educators or gurus? I do not believe that you should ever enter into subject to without a clear exit strategy, which is heavily influenced by available equity. Great point, and I think Kevin made that statement. Today's episode is brought to you by the same folks who saved Steve's subject to deal when the due on sale was called. You see, Investor Property Loan was the company that helped him refinance without having to wait a long period of time before the title seasoning was happening. So guess what? That was critical. That actually set them apart from a lot of other DSCR lenders. And so if you're looking for financing for your next investment, maybe it's to buy another rental, it's to do a refinance because maybe you're doing the Burr method or you have a balloon coming up. Hopefully you too haven't had the due on sale called. Whatever the reason is, look, there's no wonder why these guys are the most top reviewed mortgage company on biggerpockets.com. If you go to www.investorpropertyloan.com/DSCR, you can check out their rates. Just with a few clicks, you can see what the rates, the terms, the fees, all of that is. You don't even have to give your information unless you want to move forward. Again, that's investorpropertyloan.com/DSCR. And make sure you tell them Courtney sent you. Unfortunately, too many gurus have been teaching to buy subject to when there's minimal or no equity in the property. So if this property had no equity and this happened, what would you have done?
Well, I wouldn't have bought it. So
very fair. Again, if this would have been like a 2012 great neighborhood, if this would have happened, and let's just say, and I don't do a ton of these, but I have bought some with lower equity. What I would have done is let's just say, how much was your cash out refinance? Let's just say, okay, so it was worth, 175. What percentage?
75%. So it was like 132 and some change.
All right, so if it's worth 175 and then minus the 132, so we're looking at 43,000. I would have, if this happened to me, I would have pursued doing a loan with a 70% loan with a private money lender on this property. 30-year private money loan. Sometimes I throw in like a 10-year balloon or something, but I would have done that. But then I would have gone ahead and taken that 43,000, plus there were going to be some fees, right, with like the closing and all that. I would have taken that and I would have looked at all my other properties and said, hey, does any of them have the equity?
Yeah.
And so that would have been my first line of defense is, because I have some properties that are either free and clear, that have equity. This is why you don't want to always pull your equity because they give me option, right? I could have done a whole second private money loan for the, let's just say 48,000 or whatever, on another property. If not, it would have been coming out of my pocket.
Yeah. And because you would have
I would have looked at my full
you would have
portfolio.
bought it as an asset you wanted. You're taking the risk and you're prepared to like back it up and
Which is
and mature that
why
asset.
having cash in the bank is so critical.
Yeah.
Because if this happened, holy crap, if this happened on more than one at a time, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so for me, that's one of those things. The more subject twos I have in my portfolio, the more I feel I need to have either cash or access to cash.
Well, some people too, they want to like they want to retire their subject to debt like at some point. But I also say like I'm not strict like I've got some older subject to. And like I could refinance easily, but the fact that I could means I don't need to retire it. Like whatever, if they it's very unlikely that they're going to call it due because it's been there. I've had it for years. But if they did, I can refinance it. So I'm not stressed to have to refinance it preemptively. It's like if they do, I've got equity. I've got like
I could argue that point, and so if you guys want to see us argue that point, let us know in the comments below because then we can have a whole separate episode on arguing that point. Because I actually think you're still leaving yourself vulnerable.
Okay.
But I'm not going to open up Pandora's box there. All right. Okay. You mentioned earlier you learned from our friend Vina. Vina is a very experienced investor, creative investor, and so I think that's where you originally learned about buying with equity.
Yeah, absolutely. She really taught like you want equity, you want cash flow amortization, and some combination in there. You would buy safe,
Okay.
I did all like all her trainings back.
Yeah, Vina's been doing this for 30 plus years.
I've since done Pete's and that, but Vina's actually my core of like where I started and learned wholesaling as well.
And then you and I have been doing business together, 5 years plus, something like that. So you've also seen I have a very strong philosophy around you truly do need to have equity or going into it knowing I'm exposing myself to the risk of little to no, which means cash in the bank or equity in my other properties that I know how to get the money for that equity quickly.
Yeah.
Again, I told you what my strategy would have been, but how many people if this was their only deal, they didn't have another deal with equity, if they didn't know how to raise private money to put, equity on that second property, if they didn't have cash in the bank, at this point you have an investor that's hurt and you then have a seller that's hurt and again, some issues. And again, we talked about if they would have wholesaled it. So I do think who you're learning subject to from is critical. Someone said, did they have a real estate license? Yes, I've said the S word a lot, but I really want to say a stronger word here. Why the F does that matter?
I don't.
Sorry. Like why would that have changed this? Like that's a legitimate question. Why? But hey, like thank you for asking a question. Not to be rude to your question, but why does someone think like that would have changed? But
yeah. I obviously.
Like, is that an ethics question?
I don't have a license. Like, I'm an investor. I'm an experienced investor. And I'm a carer. Like, I'm gonna care about my seller. So I'm having some credential doesn't really change that. I'm gonna look after them.
I definitely
do good business, and I'm gonna deliver. On
having a license does mandate you taking an ethics course. Doesn't mandate you having ethics. But so I get that part. They said, how did the investor solve the problem? We already went through that. Did they convince the seller to go along and memorialize the solution? Was the seller willing to do whatever was needed?
Yeah, we had great conversations. Great rapport with my acquisition person originally, and also myself. She was very cooperative and would have done whatever, and she's cool.
Yeah. Another person said, what was plan B, and is the property still a deal with? I'll just subject to. We pretty much exhausted that with the DSCR loan, like the Burr method. And how did they manage their stress level and move forward while living my worst nightmare? Again, you mentioned, you are a wartime general. Again, very experienced businessman. When things get tough, you know how to put your head down and figure things out. I do think it's also important, if you don't manage that stress, you are going to make bad decisions. right?
Yeah, I think I don't know.
You're not an emotional
I
investor.
don't know where I learned, but I'm very like stress makes me calm. If you
Yeah.
you know that fire, this is fine. That person sitting in the fire. I'm sort of that, but it's different. It's like it's not this is fine. It's, there's a fire. Okay, where's my exit? Is
Yeah,
there a
like
fire
let me
extinguisher?
analyze the situation.
Could we run and get a fire extinguisher, try to put it out? Should I run for the door? Like I'm gonna sit for a second
Yeah.
in that fire, but thinking about the solutions available to me and the best ones.
So the 2 times I've had guns pulled on me by walking houses, I remember both times afterwards being like, because I'm very similar. I get very calm, very solution driven, very like aware of my situation and my surrounding and whatnot. I get like hyper, like let me take charge, let me do, and both times afterwards when I was either driving away from the situation, I was like, I need to talk to my damn therapist about this because like this is not like, is this normal? like when you have a gun in your face, anyway.
Luckily, I haven't been tested at that level yet. So I live in New Orleans, so it's only a matter of time.
Did their paperwork disclaim to the seller that this could happen and that the buyer didn't bear any responsibility?
Yeah, it actually did. So so we did sign disclaimers
Yeah.
stating that subject to. We both did. I did.
Yeah.
She did. And it did say I made like it.
Like this is a possibility, but a rarity, but never.
Yeah, and there was risk of foreclosure based on that. So like I could let it foreclose. I had some like I would never do that, but like there was risk assumed by her and for me.
So I do this paperwork both in my purchase agreement. I have a disclosure section for my purchase agreement, but then also at the act of sale. So it's like twice we go over it, like in paperwork, not just conversations. If this was a low or no equity deal, which it wasn't, will this experience stop them from doing similar deals in the future? This was obviously not a low equity deal. And you already said that you'll do another subject to deal. Does this reinforce the equity demand on a subject to for you?
Like it does, but I mean there are other. It doesn't like again. You can be prepared. Like there's just risk. You need to weigh up the risk. Like equity makes it. If it's got equity, I'm safe all day. It might have less equity and might have cash flow, but but I might want that asset. Like you said. So there is. You just need to.
There's something about controlling an asset that like you and I see value in, but then you just need to know the risk.
But yeah, I think the danger is people that think there's no risk, right? Like it's like, hey, it's easy, and like there is risk. Just know.
There's no such thing as 100% safe subject to deal.
It's a probability. You do need to ask yourself, like you're like, hey, you hope it doesn't happen. It's very unlikely. I still would say it's very unlikely to happen. It's happened to me, but it's still very unlikely.
Yep.
But you do need to know there's a small percent chance that it can. If that happened, what would you do? If your answer is, oh my God, I'd be
devastated.
Then don't do the deal.
Yeah, if this would cause you to lose sleep, then don't do it.
Not even sleep. You can lose sleep. Sleep's okay, but if it's going to cause you to lose your house, your shirt, like
all those stuff. Yep.
But lose some sleep. But just as long as you won't lose your shirt on the deal.
Well, and I think that's important. But also too, if you don't have the risk tolerance for a deal like this, if some of you are like, this is my worst nightmare, then don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not worth, because if you can't control your emotion around it, you're going to make bad decisions, right?
Yeah.
Someone said, depending on if the trigger is known, which we knew, the seller talked with the housing authority, would using a land contract structure instead, though still a due on sale violation, would that have helped? We've talked about this. That wouldn't have helped.
And not in this case,
And not in this case because of the underlying debt. And this is why it's really important, because so many people listen to a guru on YouTube or TikTok saying, here's your ways around a due on sale. There is literally nothing you could have done as a subject to have avoided this. I don't believe. And if you believe differently, put it in the comments. Like, I'm curious, right? I'm open to that. But so everyone's saying there's all these workarounds for due on sale. It does not mean it's guaranteed for the deal. This is one of the reasons I want to deep dive this was because I don't believe there is a workaround for this one to where you could still buy it subject to and effectively, solely because it was a housing authority funding program type of loan. It was the type of debt that was being bought subject to.
By the way, You should have seen the due on sale clause on my DCSR loan was actually really.
They're like, oh, we're familiar with this. We beefed up our paperwork.
I'll give it to you actually if you want to post in the comments but it was like it was mentioned like bond for deed, like just all the
like it literally calls out all the ways you can transfer.
Yeah. It was real. I don't know if
So
it's
that's
just
really
because they knew it was a fail subject too, or if that. But that
well,
could also
no,
be
it's
new
becoming.
Language. That could be new language.
It's
Yeah.
well because it's becoming. So look, as you guys know, I like to learn from the gray-haired guys who've been doing this since the '60s and '70s. So I've been reading Jack Miller's newsletters, and in the '70s, he was talking about the court cases of how they were instituting the due on sale clause. Previously, loans did not have a due on sale, but because assumptions. Or subject to without a formal assumption. So a simple assumption, which was like you didn't have to qualify, you just signed the paperwork. You just brought $500 and signed it. That became so popular in the '70s into the '80s. Banks started going into the courthouses, the courtrooms, and fighting for their position, and that's what ultimately the due on sale became a factor. And so I'm reading in the '70s and '80s with Jack's newsletters, month by month, these newsletters are talking about these, and further update about the due on sale, and he's talking through these. This is why, seeing that DSCR language, that new language is so important. Because what are banks going to do differently, right?
Yeah.
Bruce Norris, who's a guy who I highly respect out of California, has sat in Fannie Mae top level individuals, conversations with them that if they don't figure out a way to let the debt stay, either with the individual, there's going to be an issue with the industry, right? Because all those low 2, 3, 4s, 2 and 3s, right? And we're not going back there. It's very improbable that we're going to go back there. And so he's talking about that. So then what's going to happen? They're going to go look at that documentation. And so because Subject 2 is becoming so popular, we think that the due on sale, like maybe new mortgage documents are going to say, if you do a land contract, bond for deed in Louisiana, they're going to name that. They just say very vaguely if there's a transfer of interest, right? But they may, again, as the DSCR got very specific.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. Again, I'll give it to you. You like it. I haven't showed you that yet, actually.
Yeah, I'm building a whole entire file in my computer on, when I talk about, I love studying this. All right, just a few more questions and we'll wrap up here. Someone said, how many years were left on the loan? So it was a 30-year loan and you were 11 years in. Hey guys, Courtney Fricke here. We've got Aussie Steve. And look, if you have a deal that needs to get moved, Southeast Louisiana, even in South Mississippi, we're your folks. We are the largest dispo company, really in the greater New Orleans area, even Southeast Louisiana. We have great contacts in South Mississippi as well. Steve, why do we move more deals than others?
Just we're very deep in this market, so Greater New Orleans can be really confusing for national wholesalers. The comps are hard. We change block for block. We got flood zones. We get a lot of hurricanes and the likes, and just a lot of the national platforms don't have the buyers on their list. So we are deep with buyers, but we're deep with relationships, which is really important in this market. So we love JVing with out-of-state investors.
Like I said, we do a ton of business with other investors. So go to homebuyerlouisiana.com/Courtney. Fill out the information, we'll get in touch with you and we'll move this deal along.
Yep.
Okay, so 19 years left. All right, was the original note holder dead? No, they weren't. What was the market value? We talked about this, ARV 200, but as is 175. And the loan was 112, because you then put some additional in there.
The as-is, it wasn't quite as-is 175 because they had updated it. It was more the rental grade ARV.
Was there an intermediary involved? I'm assuming they're wondering if there was an escrow company involved, or were you making the companies, the payments directly to the lender?
I was going to be making them directly to the lender. We do. There was the seller did get a mortgage from me, like a note from me saying that so that obligates me to pay the same amount as a mortgage to the mortgagor. So she did get a note saying that I'm making those payments, but not to her, to the.
Yeah, it was called a mirror wrap. A sale with a mortgage mirror wrap is how the paperwork was done at the act of sale, which again mandated that you mirror her payments.
Yes.
So speaking of paperwork, I wouldn't mind knowing where the paperwork came from as well. Did you use a transaction coordinator?
No.
You're like, what the hell is that? I see it in your face. No, because a lot of people who are buying in that you have to have a TC, do your paperwork. I do not believe a TC would have, I'm going to be very clear, I do not believe a TC would have stopped this from happening.
Yeah.
Where did the paperwork from the active sale, the subject to like your limited power of attorney, where'd that come from?
Title company.
The title company did it all.
Yeah, yeah, and these are like accomplished title company, and I think some of your stuff's in there, and like, but the title company and a competent title company does this.
All right, I think that's it. So
Wait, I'll give you one just epilogue because I mentioned that like the burr I had left $700 in it. So that's like it's like.
Oh yeah. Yes, thank you.
Which is fun. I mean that's.
I know where you're going with this
that's
because
pretty-
it's what you sent me after.
It's pretty much. I mean that $700 is basically no money, but a perfect burr has no money in it. So it wasn't a perfect burr until.
Yep.
Until.
So what happens after you pay off a subject to loan?
Yeah, I got a couple pieces of mail that were more pleasant than the first one. So I got a $1,600 reimbursement from the attorney. So for whatever reason, the fees and maybe when I paid them, so that was $1,600 directly to me, to my LLC. So now I've got cash out of the property, so it's an infinite return. I've got zero money in the property and got some money out.
Okay.
I did also.
That's interesting that you got that from the attorney and it was to your LLC
to my
directly
LLC,
and
yeah.
it was not to the seller. What did
So I
pull
think
out your phone because you texted me photos of those. I'm curious what the memo said.
I don't know. Really, I think it was. I think
Like
I must
maybe
have overpaid. I must have
you overpaid and it
or
was
maybe
like a
timing or something.
and then they're just like, we know he paid it, so let's just reimburse him.
Yeah. So that was going to me, and then I did also get a couple of checks to the seller, which with my POA.
You were able to cash them, and this was for the escrow overages.
Yeah,
like-
because I did actually cancel
Her insurance.
I canceled her insurance because
You canceled yours. You just make sure you've taken her off and the mortgagor.
So I had, because I had, like I told you, I'd set up my insurance as of the closing, but I hadn't cancelled hers. Hers was still valid because I was waiting to like transfer it over. So, but I did have the POA, so I did speak to her insurance person. I put myself on as POA. I changed the address, like did all those proper things, and then I said, hey, now you can cancel it. And I gave them my paperwork for when I put my insurance on it, so backdated. So there was escrow overages. So I got a check for escrow overages, and I got a check for the cancellation of that insurance policy.
So, so you got all right. So this one is a $1,678. So $1,678.59. This was enclosed. This is from the attorney. Well, actually, Hancock Whitney sent it to your LLC.
Yes, okay.
And it says, enclosed herewith is a refund check we received from Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office, Civil Division, in reference to the above case numbers. Should you have any questions, please contact our office. This was because I bet you they prepaid in the foreclosure, and because of the timeline, and because you had basically, because they paid it, they charged it to the payoff, and so then they went ahead and said, okay, well, let's reimburse because they reimbursed it. So for their auditing, they can't just keep that as but the other ones you got, it was like what, 20-something hundred?
Yeah, 200 was a refund on the insurance, and then maybe 300 was an escrow.
Maybe taxes or something.
Yeah.
And so you are money in your pocket to have done this burr. At this point.
Exactly. So that's a perfect burr. That's
More than perfect.
So that's what I like those deals.
Because you actually got paid to then now own this house.
I failed the subject to, and look, I wanted that amortization. I did the deal for that. I wasn't looking for a burr. So actually, I didn't really want to do a burr at this time. It wasn't my goal.
You did it because of that amortization of how you could basically manipulate time.
Exactly.
And there's a little difference in the interest rate, but still, it's that amortization that's strongest here. Any final thoughts as we wrap this up?
I think just be safe out there. I think you should be aware things can be called due, the gurus saying it's all easy, that risks happen. But by the same token, that shouldn't stop you unless you're terrified by that. That shouldn't stop you. Like risk is fine. Reward comes from risk. If you're educated and smart, listen to people like yourself, like Pete, like Vina, listen to these smart people. you can take risk in an educated way. And when things do go wrong, this was my worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But it was okay.
Well, and that's one of the things, like, so you keep mentioning Vina, myself, and Pete Fortunato. Like Pete, one of my main mentors, he's like, he'll do these, but he gets out of them pretty early because he just wants less of the headache, less of the risk, right? And he wants to get away from institutions and he wants to get towards individuals, right? And so it's all, again, all who you learn from. And this should not say, hey, never go do a subject to deal. I love that safety. When I teach my classes, which I only do a few workshops these days now, when I do a workshop on safe subject to, you better bet your sweet cheeks I'm doing a deep dive on this, because it's like with students, because I'm be like, hey, what can you learn from this? The best thing you did for yourself was you bought with equity. The second best thing was that you had cash in the bank. And again, those are my two biggest things for subject to, is if you have equity, and you were 68% loan to value when you purchased this. And so it's a reminder too that there's also deals with equity out there. So with that being said, thanks for being willing to share the details. You immediately, when I got back from France, you were like, you're going to love this. I'm like, what? Obviously, I didn't love that this happened
And
to you.
that was the but that's sort of my humor too, because that was the context. And they may not go when you said it first. I was like, Courtney's gonna love this. I was like, damn, I'm so annoyed. I'm like, Courtney's gonna love this because she's gonna geek out on it.
He's like, I have a gift for you.
Yes.
And you gave me all the files.
My misfortune was fortune in a fun way.
You're like, from an educational perspective, you're gonna love this. And then when you gave me the files, I was like, I'm like chomping at the bit. Well, look, thank you so much for showing. Guys, let me know what some of your takeaways were. Please put in the comments, some of your takeaways from this. Any thoughts? Again, if someone thinks that they could have done a subject to and prevented this, I am very curious to hear your argument for that. Because I personally don't see a way for that, but I'm open to learn and open to hear. But I'm going to poke holes in it, so you better have a strong argument. How can people get in touch with you? Just in general, a lot of times you want to point to your Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook, Stephen Keighery on Facebook.
I'll put it in the comments. You're not a stranger to the podcast. Well, guys, this has been a fun one. I'm pretty sure I'm going to chop this up into a 2-part session, and because there's a lot to digest here, and yeah. You went through it like a champ.
I mean, you learn from your mistakes, and I hope that your followers can learn from my mistake as well. So they need to make themselves.
I think we're all going to be better investors from having talked through this. It's a good reminder for me that rare is never.
Yep.
And so on that, let's end on that note, because that is a good statement. That rare is never. So, all right, Steve, appreciate you. Hey, wait. Don't turn off this episode right away. So Steve shared something. He said that whenever he refinanced with that DSCR loan, right, that debt service coverage ratio loan, that the new mortgage had some strong language in there. And so I said, you know what, send that to me. Let me share that with these folks and kind of keep it all in the same place to make it easy for you to find. And so stick with me for just a little bit longer. I want to give you some gems, right? And I think this is important because one of the ways that I see moving forward with subject to that we may see some changes is that we may see some changes in the mortgage documents, specifically around the due on sale clause about the acceleration. This is the acceleration portion. Everyone calls it the due on sale, right? It's really called the acceleration clause. That doesn't sound as fun, but whatever. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at this. And look, if you're just listening, maybe it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, something like that, you're not going to be able to see what I'm showing here because I'm going to show my screen and I'm going to actually show the mortgage document. Now, it was legal paper and I think he scanned it letter. But besides that, we get the meat and the potatoes of it. So let's go ahead. Let's take a look again. If you're just listening, you might want to go watch it later if you'd like to see the actual document. All right. So if you look here, you've got number 19. It says acceleration on transfer or encumbrance. 19.1, acceleration on transfer or encumbrance of mortgaged property. If borrower sells, gives an option to purchase, right? If they give a lease option, right? Exchanges, assigns, conveys, encumbers, right? Now, this is where it cuts off, but it continues. Or any of the borrower's interest in the mortgage property or suffers its title to, or any interest in the mortgage property to be divested, whether voluntarily or involuntary. Or if there is a sale or transfer of any interest in the borrower, or if the borrower changes or permits to be changed any character or use of the mortgage property, or drills or extracts or enter in any lease for the drilling or extracting of oil. Interesting that if you own a so this is interesting here, right? If you have a house in Texas that's on a, 3 acres, you have a mortgage, and then you're like, hey, wait, out in the back acre, let's go drill for some oil. They could call due the remaining balance. That's a very interesting overreach here, don't you think? Maybe call it overreach, maybe call it whatever. All right, let's see back. For the drilling or extracting of oil, gas, or other hydrocarbon substance of any mineral of any kind or character of the mortgage property. Maybe they might be afraid of some EPA stuff. I don't know. Interesting. Or if title to such mortgage property becomes subject to any lien or charge, voluntary or involuntary, contractual or statutory, without lenders prior written consent, then lender at lender's option may, without prior notice, declare all sums secured by this security instrument, basically the remaining balance, regardless of their stated due date, their maturity date, immediately due and payable, and may exercise all rights and remedies in the loan documents. For purposes of this section, interest in the mortgaged property means any legal or beneficial interest in the mortgaged property, including but not limited to those beneficial interests transferred in a bond for deed, which is what that's a word Louisiana uses. Contract for deed, most other states use that. Land contract, right? They don't say that here, but contract for deed, land contract is what every other state uses, just about. Installment sales contract, which would be a wrap, okay? Or escrow agreement, the intent of which is the transfer of title by borrower to a purchaser of a future date. So, guys, what did this do? This acceleration clause just cover? It covered lease options, bond for deed, contract for deed, land contract. It covered like if you did a wrap with the seller. It covered, I would argue it would cover a general option, a pure option. So there's something to be said here that, again, when someone says, oh, you can protect yourself from the due on sale clause because you can just deed the property. Here's the workaround: deed the property back to the seller and then have the property stay in the seller's name, but go ahead and do a land contract, right? Or do a lease option. This right here plainly states that they could still call it on that, right? And so I want to be very clear. There is no 100% workaround for the due on sale clause. I'm not going to talk about it right now because I've talked about in other episodes, but trust won't fully do it. The type of deal structure. So instead of a traditional subject to with the title transfers, so instead doing it, doing it as a lease option or a bond for deed, land contract for deed, or something like that, that won't fully protect you either. So keep in mind, you could go old school and ask for permission. Literally contact a lender and say, hey, I'd like to buy this property on a bond for deed, and I'd like you to remove the acceleration clause. I'd like you to give consent that you won't accelerate it. You don't think that can happen? I've never personally done that, but my mentor, Pete Fortunato, has. Literally, he had the VA. He went to the VA administration in his town when he was helping someone in a bad situation, and they literally wrote out that they would basically remove this. It was a waiver, due on sale clause waiver. So that could protect you, right? But otherwise, understand that this risk exists. So again, I'm just going to emphasize, how can you ultimately protect yourself, have equity in the deal, have equity elsewhere in your portfolio, and the skills to know how to tap into that equity, or have cash in the bank? Those are the things that can save you in the event that the due on sale call gets called, right? So we talked about that extensively. I just want to remind you, I want to demystify this. One, guys, things aren't scary if you have tools to combat it, right? If you have understanding, right? A dark room is only scary if you either don't have you don't know what's in the room, right? Like for example, if you walked in a room but you knew it was 100% empty, then you'd be less afraid that you were going to stub your toe, right? Like it had, if it had no furniture in it, right? Or if it was a room that you've been in, every day of your life, you would walk in it with a dark light because you know when to kind of bob and weave because you're so familiar with it, right? Or what if you had a small nightlight plugged into the wall? Like you had some understanding, right? All of those things are what make real estate investing not a gamble, is when you understand things, when you have tools and resources on how to properly protect yourself and everyone involved in the deal. And so I hope, more than anything, I hope that this episode, part one and part two of this breakdown, really helped you. Number one, demystify the deal on sale call being called so that you can actually see what happened, right? Steve didn't go to jail, right? Steve's not in trouble. He, like, literally, he just they exercised a legal, contractual right, and Steve responded to it, right? And again, the seller is fine, Steve is fine, right? The buyer of this deal, right? And at the end of the day, um, I just want you guys to be prepared so that, if you choose to do subject to deals, my true hope is that you will be a better investor having listened to these, to the part one and part two. I feel like a better investor after having deep dive this, right? I feel better prepared doing this case study, right? It helped improve me. Steve, he said, hey, this helped improve him as an investor. And that's all we can ask of, right? I want, the content that I put out, what is the point of it if I can't help people like myself and others become better investors doing safer deals, and it protects all parties involved, right? And so one of the things there, guys, when it comes to subject to deals, there's no such thing as a 100% risk-free subject to deal, right? And I know that that can be scary, right? Risk can be scary, but risk, your job as an investor is to mitigate risk. And so I often talk about doing subject to deals as safe as possible. In fact, I put on a workshop last year. Well, actually, we're still in 2024. So just a few months ago, I put it on. And it's a deep dive of how I go from once the seller says yes until after the closing. What are all the things that you can do to do a subject to deal as safe as possible? I break down and I teach you how to read a mortgage statement, how to understand and do due diligence so that you know when to pull the trigger, when to say yes. A lot of stuff, the disclosures, the paperwork, all of those things. Because a lot of people aren't equipping themselves with as much knowledge and resources when it comes to subject to deals, and therefore they're doing unsafe subject to deals. And that breaks my heart because it does hurt everyone involved, including the sellers, right? And what I want to do is I want to, really compel as many people as possible to do safe subject to deals, as safe as you can possibly do them. Now, stay tuned. I'm going to be rolling out my 2025 workshops soon, which it will include more than one of the safe subject to. So if you can't make that one, then there may be another one that you can attend. And so with that being said, um, know this, guys, I am cheering you on. Whether you're doing these subject to deals or not, I'm cheering you on, and I hope that that you enjoyed this. So thank you for tuning in. It always means a lot that you guys, tune in and get, give your feedback so that I can keep improving the content that I give you. All right, guys, I think we've beaten this horse. I hate that statement. Why did I just say that? I think we've exhausted this topic. I think that's a better way to say that. But with that being said, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, appreciate you guys.